Welcome to the Dealmakers podcast. The Dealmakers is a platform for leaders in the commercial real estate industry to share their personal stories, business insights, and industry secrets because we believe in spotlighting the real people behind the deals. This podcast is brought to you by Agora, a comprehensive real estate investment management platform offering a wide range of services to enable real growth and provide the best real estate investment experience both for GPs and LPs. I'm Asaf Raz. Let's go. And today, long time, we've postponed this episode for 3 times already, but I feel like this is the magic moment. This is when it's supposed to happen. Today I have with me Jonathan Buckelew. Jonathan is the Vice President of Asset Management at Peak and has a vast history in real estate, but is also an extremely interesting persona when it comes to social media, automation, AI, technology. Jonathan, please, it's a pleasure to have you. Take it away. Tell us about yourself so our audience gets to know you, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, great. I'm like you mentioned, we've been trying to do this for a little while, and I'm so happy we're doing it. And thank you again for having me. Very excited to talk today. So, yeah, like you mentioned, I've been in the real estate industry, primarily focused actually on multifamily for over 10 years. I've had a bit of an interesting journey. I started as a CPA focused on real estate, which has come in handy a lot, but that was always a stepping stone for me to get into private equity. Always liked multifamily as an asset class because I could understand it, I could comprehend it. I live in apartments, I understand it, I understand what the renter's journey is. So I worked at a large institution here in New York City for a few years, and then COVID hit. And I remember always saying to myself on the subway going to work to Grand Central for 7 years, take a risk, John. And I did that during COVID. I had my first kid and I started my own business with a friend and actually my uncle, which was not, in a sense, real estate related. It was a fintech business that went after actually hotels and residential buildings, and that taught me to really have more of an entrepreneurial operator mindset, and that really switched everything for me because when I was working in a private equity shop, I kind of inherited this playbook that had been around for 30 years, and I thought this is the only way to do things. But when I built my own company, you're building the playbook as you go. So that was such a massive shift in my mindset. And within a few years, we had a little bit of success. Startups are hard. I linked up with a couple of guys who started buying garden style deals in the Southeast, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, etc. And I built out the asset management team at that company. And I applied all the things that I had learned on my entrepreneurial journey there, and I started questioning everything. We had third party management for property management and construction management. I started questioning all of that. Uh, and that allowed me to really develop my own playbook and to meet with so many different marketers and prop tech companies and suppliers. And really, why that's applicable to this conversation is when I left that company about 8 months ago, I started sharing my journey on LinkedIn. When I started my own company, I was all over LinkedIn, and that brought me a really big client. So I said in October of 24, I'm going to put myself out there and start posting and interacting on LinkedIn and just really starting to share my journey. And it's been about 6 or 7 months, and my follower count has grown. The engagement has grown. I've been, invited to great events by you guys actually here in New York City through my online presence. But the most important piece of that is I have learned so much more in asset management, which, that's my bread and butter, asset management, multifamily. I've learned so much more about how to be more effective in this role by putting myself out there and meeting so many interesting people. So definitely excited for this conversation to talk more about the kind of how I've approached LinkedIn, social media, and what that's brought and what I've hopefully been able to bring to my audience.
Awesome. I love that. And yeah, it's a deviation of our regular conversations because usually what we end up talking about is interest rates and asset classes and spreads and loan to value ratio and so on and so forth. And at certain points in life, I feel like, or especially in a real estate journey, I feel like there's these special stories that actually, when you go through them and understand them, you really see that, like you said, there's no one playbook. There are many ways to get to the same point, and I'm really intrigued by the journey that you're going through. I would like to start a bit about the real estate. understanding a bit more about how your the market is changing and shifting all the time. I keep having this conversation every episode, but for me, it's really interesting to understand before we go into social and AI is how are you navigating the current market, right? And you're from the asset management perspective. You're an entrepreneur in heart and mind and spirit. Um, how does that work out with the current state of the market? How do you stay optimistic? What are you looking for today when you make the investment decisions?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think the past, well, not I think I know, the past couple of years have proven how important operations are. When I started my career in 2012, 2013, that period was the beginning, of a bull market in our economy, but also more specifically in real estate with interest rates so low. It seemed like everybody could make money. And operations was a second thought to, hey, where are we buying this deal? It's all about the basis. Operations will come because it's easy to operate. 2020, 21, 22, when rates started to increase in 22 and more so in 23, spreads and margins got super tight. So revenues started to come down, expenses kept going up, especially your interest expense. So operations became the main focus. And that's where I started to differentiate myself. And like I mentioned before, really starting to question everything. So great asset managers are the ones who can measure and bring in, even if it's saving a couple $100, that adds up. But through all my questioning, supplier relationships with my construction managers, hey, why are we using the Fergusons or the HG supplies like everybody else? Why aren't we going overseas to save 30 or 40% on our granite costs or our kitchen faucet costs? Why aren't we doing that? So I implemented that. Technology. Okay, this industry has been so beholden to the model of for every 100 units you have a certain amount of leasing agents and property managers and maintenance workers. Why can't we start centralizing our operations to lower our costs? And in the wave of AI, why don't we bring in companies like Elise AI or Colleen, whoever it may be, to start taking over the bulk of leasing, the bulk of collections, the bulk of renewals at a much cheaper cost? So doing things like that, also bringing in overseas help at another fraction of the cost, that allowed us to really lower our expenses. That made these properties manageable. Didn't make It's not as if these properties became super profitable because it was just hard to manage, but we saved a lot of money, and I think we outperformed our comp set because of that. So that's the way I've been looking at it. Revenue growth is starting to rebound a bit. We're starting to be able to push rents. Now, I joined a new company called Peak, like you mentioned, about a month ago. New York City is its own market. Rents have been increasing like crazy here. So the revenue story is not the same here as it is in Birmingham, Alabama, or Macon, Georgia. But the expense situation is just as difficult. And those are the types of things that I've brought in my past companies, and now currently at Peak, just trying to see where we could cut but also maintain operations and maintain a certain brand that we could give off to our tenants, because we want to make sure that they stay with us. So that's a bit of insights into how I am operating my deals right now.
And I feel like it's fairly unique. So when I have these conversations, usually we're not talking about the playbook, right? We talk about the real estate itself. And here, what you're saying is, look, the fundamentals are not changing. So tomorrow morning, the spread is not going to change much. Interest rate is not going to change much. The revenue opportunity might, like you said, it's getting a little bit better, but there's an opportunity around the fundamentals that people usually don't go to, that you can make a difference there, right? And I think a great example is, and again, we'll deep dive into AI, but for example, strip mall guy, Don, you went to the event at the gala, right? The way that he sources new deals and opportunities is through social media. People just reach out to him all the time because he's so famous on social. People just reach out and say, hey, I have the strip mall, I have the strip mall. It becomes easier to find new deals, to find new partners, to find new LPs, right? It's like you said, it's much more efficient than having these like, okay, this is the number of brokers I'll need, this is the number of property managers I need, whatever. He does it differently through social. So I think it's a great opportunity to look outside of the fundamentals of real estate and understand that there's a lot of things that you can do around it. And that's where I want to go into your social media story a bit and understand not everybody's out there. Not everybody is open to start, talking about their journey on social media and writing about it and have a following. Like, it's not for everybody. Um, but it has a big, big, big upside to it. And what I want to focus on today is trying to understand that upside and how did that really help you, find this new position, finding new partners, finding new ways to do things, and really kind of help your career and your path.
Yeah, I think I want to preface by saying to those people, that you're right, it's not for everybody, but I think there's a lot of people who are a little fearful that if they just overcame that fear and started sharing, they'd see the fruits of that sharing pretty quickly. So yeah, I wouldn't say I was shy. It's not as if I was recording videos. I think that's the next component for me. But I felt very confident in the things that I had learned over the past couple of years with the fintech company, with building the asset management team. And I just felt, hey, I have a lot to share on this notion. My perspective is different than I think of, versus a lot of other people. So I just remember sitting down in October of last year, and I keep saying that month because that wasn't that long ago. I just said, I'm going to start posting. What am I going to talk about? I'm really into design on multifamily real estate. Let me start talking about that. Okay, nobody really cared, but I did. It was kind of like a creative outlet for me. And then I just played around with things. I went on so many different calls with, like I mentioned before, tech companies and suppliers and marketers. And I said, why don't I start sharing about that? I'm doing all this work to build my own playbook that I was going to bring with me wherever I went as the next role. Why don't I start sharing about that? So it was trial and error. What should I talk about? What do people care about? So that plus reaching out to different companies to set up demos to learn, that was a big component. And then shouting those people out on LinkedIn. But then really just as big of a component was I've spent a lot of time just finding really interesting people, whether they were posting or whether their job title sounded interesting and applicable to what I wanted to do. And I just reached out and I said, hey, are you willing to get on a phone call? And I'd say 50 to 60% of people were willing to get on a phone call. And I took the time to develop those relationships. So the formula of posting, getting on demo calls, and reaching out to people and just networking, which was the original plan of being more on LinkedIn, that combination really catapulted my journey over these past 6 months. And yeah, you kind of referenced to it, but I was able to speak to a lot of different companies, and the personal brand stands out. There are probably 5 million other asset managers focused on multifamily real estate in New York City. How do you stand out from them? LinkedIn is a powerful place. And again, my name was out there, my personal brand was out there, and it became an attraction. It was, hey, we know John now. We might not know him personally, but we see his brand out there. We like the stuff he's putting out there. Let's talk to him. And actually, this could benefit our company if we, hire him because now our name will be associated with him and there's brand recognition that will just grow and grow and grow. And that was essentially a prerequisite for me. I didn't want to join another team and then, put LinkedIn to the side. Together, I think it's a powerful combination that my name will continue to be out there just as the company's name will now be associated with me. So it's a short journey. And I think people just, if you're willing to do it, just start posting and reach out to me. Would love to share kind of best practices that I've learned, and I'm still learning every day.
So
So
what would you say to someone that says, look, I need to focus on my job. I need to focus on the real estate. I need to focus on managing assets. I need to focus on crunching the numbers. I need to focus on working with my peers. One practical tip that can take them through this journey to actually, like, tomorrow morning, what's one practical tip that for you would be okay? That's the way to start. Like, the one thing they should do if they're thinking about, I don't have time, I have kids, I have a full-time job, I have peers, I have a lot of stuff to do. Like, how do you put that together with your day to day?
yeah, I understand that I was focused on this for 7 months. There was a lot more time for me to dedicate, but this is cliche, but you do have time. Instead of watching Netflix for 4 hours, watch it for three and spend an hour just I'd say you start with that, going on LinkedIn and networking. If you want to automate the process to try to reach out to people, there's services out there for that. I have found especially at first doing it manually, where I am sending similar messages to maybe 50 people, but I'm taking the time to, curate that, as opposed to with an automated system. They're just, oh, it's an asset manager, send the message. You spend 20 minutes a night going on LinkedIn, sending messages to people. You could send 30 messages in 30 minutes. It's easy. I found it much easier on the phone than the computer. And people will reach out, and then you'll start having those conversations, and that will grow. But yeah, I think everyone's got time. I've got two kids. I've got a full-time job. But if you just spend 20 to 30 minutes per night doing it, it'll be slower, but you'll make progress.
I remember when I started this podcast 3 years ago, and the CEO, we were 14 people in the company, and the CEO comes to me and says, "Why do we need a podcast? Like, what is this all about?" And I said, "Look, people would usually talk to me if I say, hey, I'm working at this company, you want to buy my stuff, that's one thing. But if I just want to get to know them, I want to talk to them. And it also helps create content. So on my side, this one tip that I have is start a podcast. It's so easy. So you record your conversations, right? They could be video, they could just be audio, you can just do it on your phone, whatever. You repurpose them, you use that content to create more content that goes into social media. It kind of cuts down into what you like, what the guests like, to put them on the pedestal, create those like really closed in, strong relationships. It's something that I've been doing for a long time. And I really like this because I get an opportunity to talk to people. People love to talk, and open, just easygoing conversations, nothing serious, but just, sharing tips, sharing life stories, sharing values. So I think for me, this was a really good, way to kind of grow our brand recognition as a company, but also help put people like you on the pedestal and create really good, engaging content that can really help social media. So capturing the journey as it happens, if you're having conversations and you take the insights out of those, I think that's also really helpful.
Yeah, there's a couple points there. Putting yourself out there. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I don't remember the percentages, but if you put yourself out there via post, let's say from a sales perspective, you have a 30 to 40% higher likelihood of closing a sale, because now there's a recognition. There's a trust that's built in. If you do video where I can see your face and I really build trust even more, it's 60 to 70%. So from a sales perspective, and I think companies, especially in real estate, are starting to understand uh, podcasts, posting on LinkedIn, newsletters, etc. It might feel saturated. It's not, especially in our industry, but that's how you build trust. People in my shoes, they want to go with companies and people that they know. And especially from the tech side, there are so many options out there. But when you build these relationships, either directly like you and I have over the past couple of months, or indirectly where I'm following along on LinkedIn or X or wherever, I'm much more likely to purchase your product than someone else who I don't know.
Just for the
Uh,
relationship, though. Just for the
ex-
relationship. That's
yep,
the only thing.
right.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. That's great tips for social. And again, it's not for everybody, but there are people out there that are saying, it's not worth the time. I would love to, but I can't or I won't. So I think, and I'm sure, Jonathan, you'll be open to anybody reaching out and saying, hey, how would you do this? And have a
absolutely.
conversation about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like I say with AI, just get started. You build that muscle. I started posting once a week, then it became twice, then three. Then you get, energy from it. And there's tips and tricks that I would, love to share with whoever wants to reach out to me. More than happy to do so.
Awesome. And that takes us to our last topic of conversation, which is AI. And I think there's so many people talking about it. There's so many things, especially on how I view the way that I see my feed on LinkedIn. It's a lot of marketing people, sales people, tech people. So they consistently talk about AI, and there's this inherent fear. I remember I was in Laguna Beach a few months back, and one of the IMN events, and we were talking about AI, and it seemed like it's moving quick, right? But a few months back, there seemed that there was like an inherent fear of using these type of platforms and that type of technology for a variety of reasons. Mostly when it comes to security, the accuracy of the data that comes out, right? Some of them still have this belief. They're like, the chat, because they're using whatever chat GPT or Gemini is inventing things, and not everything is super accurate. There's a bunch of, and from then to now, it's been like what, 4 or 5 months. It feels like everything changed in AI, and probably in a month it would feel like that again.
Right.
Um, and I think that in real estate, specifically commercial real estate, there's this inherent fear from like bringing in new tools and new instruments to make life easier and more efficient. So, what's your take on adopting and implementing AI when it comes to real estate? What are the first places you would look at to implement these type of AI strategies, and how to use that today? I think that's the main topics there.
Yeah, and I talk about this a lot on LinkedIn. There's such a legacy thinking in this industry, which is a bad thing because it holds us as an industry back, but it's also a good thing because there's a lot of opportunity for these, what I'm seeing, younger shops who are much more likely to adopt new prop tech or new AI. So, yeah, we have a lot of room to grow as an industry, but the ways I'm looking at it is there are so many so many mundane tasks that take place in the industry, and I'm dealing with it now, from reporting to analytics to whatever it may be. And there's a lot of scattered information. I think there's a big prop tech wave that hit our industry, I don't know, over the past 5 to 10 years. I really saw it over the past couple. And everybody adopted or tried to adopt different things. Disparate systems weren't talking to one another, 20 different dashboards, confused leasing agents and property managers. Through all my conversations and through me seeing it firsthand, there's been a pushback or a rollback rather of that. Now it's okay, I'm looking for a centralized system that could do everything would be perfect, but a lot of different things. But so there's the legacy thinking that's inherent here. There's a kind of a thing that people have been feeling by, adopting too much technology, but there's also AI and these enhancements that people need to start taking advantage of. So my really first interactions with AI, and I think I mentioned earlier, is on the operations side. You know, trying to cut costs or speed up operations and make it more efficient, bringing in a system like I mentioned, at least AI or Colleen, to take over certain processes. That was my first interaction. Wasn't really using AI personally. I kind of had suspicions, just like you mentioned, months and months ago, but I'd say 3 or 4 months ago, just through all my conversations, I knew I had to get started because I didn't want to get left behind. So I started playing around with ChatGPT. I started just, with basic prompts, and I started to understand somewhat of the parameters and things I needed to get better at. But like you mentioned, it's changing every day. I think O3 came out recently on ChatGPT, and it's, miles ahead of the previous version. So you gotta build that muscle, and that's the way I'm looking at it. I started this journey 3 or 4 months ago with AI, and it's already saved me a ton of time. Now, there's also been a lot of half-baked things that I put out there. I talk a lot about automations through Make.com or Zapier. I've tried to build things that haven't worked yet, but the more I do it, the more I'm succeeding with basic things like, a PDF gets sent to my email instead of me downloading it to my desktop and putting it into my, Google Drive or Dropbox. I now have an automation to do that. That might sound like a simple task, but we all get a million PDFs in our email every day. That's saving me probably an hour or two each week. I can mention 10 other things to do that. So just like what I said before, just get started, start building that muscle. You should have some skepticism with the things that it's spitting out. You got to, make sure it makes sense. But I found, especially through the use of custom GPTs where I'm feeding in information that I trust, the things that I'm getting from it are saving me so much time, and it's a lot quicker from reporting, presentations, analytics, whatever it may be. And I feel like I'm so far behind other people. So there's so much opportunity there. So if you haven't started, get started. If you have started, keep going because it's crazy what it can do.
And I love that. And here are two tips on how to start that I do, right? The way that I started it. First, if you take the premium or the pro chat GPT, you have the ability within the chat to record yourself, and that would transcribe it, and then can do whatever you want with it, right? And I realized that I have a lot of thoughts while walking down the street or on the train or whatever. So I just put on my headphones and I start talking what I think about, right? Strategize about a topic or, tasks that I need to do or just, thinking in general. And it became my companion for thinking. So I walk down the street, I talk with it about, for example, social media strategy, what's the next thing we should do? And I give it ideas and I tell it to go look online at those specific references and let's come back with a digest of what I said so I can use that to show someone else and talk about it. So that's been extremely efficient and helpful for me. The second thing that we did is I don't know how many newsletters and emails and news channels you look at and receive every single day when it comes to real estate. Um, it's endless, BizNow and Connect CRE and CRE Daily and a bunch of those. So what I do is I take all of those, and on a weekly basis, I have an agent that creates a digest of all the recent real estate news I should know about from all the sources, PRE, like all the sources come into one place, and I get this digest that says, "Hey, here's the weekly real estate news you should know according to your preferences." So these are two things that I did that have been extremely helpful for me. They just help me think faster, do things faster. But I use it across the board in almost all of my operations. Everything that I do, I use it. And like you said, I definitely recommend going into it. I definitely recommend now rather than tomorrow. Like this is the time to do it. Just experiment and try it. It's going to become your best friend, your companion. And honestly, I don't see how I could do my work today without it.
Right. It's such an indispensable part, not of everybody's life so far, but it's gonna become that. And I love the two examples you gave. Like I similar kind of thing. I built a custom GPT called Jonathan Buckelew's Brain. And I was like, I don't really know the purpose of this at first, but and I scared my wife by telling her this, but I was like, I'm gonna talk to it. I'm feeling down today. I'm just gonna say kind of how I'm feeling. And the stuff that it sent back to me based off of what it knows about me, it made me feel better, and I'm not exaggerating. So it's a little scary on that front, but it actually gave me a plan to feel better professionally. Um, and it kind of gave me this roadmap. This is where you are today. These are the things that you've done. Don't forget about that. And this is your roadmap. And I said, well, this is scary that you could, pump this out in 5 seconds, but also I feel much better. So there's so many use cases for it, and it's only going to explode even more. So, uh, yeah, I need to step my game up a bit more. But there's between automations and just basic prompting, there's great stuff.
And if you're a heavy user of chat, I urge you to ask it what are your five biggest downfalls or flaws and things you need to improve on. It will be so accurate. It's scary how accurate it is. And it's going to really
I'm
help you rethink it. So
I'm going to do that after this call.
I love it. Awesome. Perfect. So last piece of every podcast that we do is called the Shameless Plug. And that is where, without AI, you shamelessly plug in what you're doing today, what are you looking for, how the audience can work with you or you want it to work with you if you're looking for GPs, co-GPs, LPs, capital, whatever you're looking for, new deals. This is your chance. And as shamelessly as you can, please, the better.
I love that. So yeah, like I mentioned, I joined with Peak, which is based out of Brooklyn, New York. We own about 80 deals in New York City, and we're always looking for more. These are multifamily deals, 5 million to $100 million, wide range. We like to beautify these properties. So what I've been most impressed by the company is these units are best in class. I mentioned before how I started talking about real estate design when I first started posting. I went to visit a Peak property 3 weeks ago, about a week into my journey, and I wish I lived in one of these apartments. Beautiful countertops and backsplash and black matte finishes, which I think is very important. I think that's another legacy thinking component of the real estate industry. Oh, we could put in white shaker cabinets and Formica countertops and boring, color schemes and think we could charge high rents. That's not the case here. So if you're a renter looking for a property, we've got units for you, but also from an investor perspective, always looking to, add more investors to our investor pool. And we've got a good thing going here. And I plan on adding a lot more value from an operational perspective. So that's the main thing that I'm doing. But there's always side businesses and the personal brand on LinkedIn and all that. So there's a lot of things going on, which is exciting.
I love that. I love that. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me today. Um, it's just, your valuable insights, your experience, unique experience is just really enlightening, and it's just really fun to hear about what you're doing. There's a lot of learnings to do from this. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of the Dealmakers podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe so you never miss out on the latest conversations with industry leaders. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes as we continue to explore the stories behind the people and the story behind the deals and the people making them happen. I'm Asaf Fraz, and I'll see you next time on the Dealmakers podcast. Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was great.
I love it.